So the Viet Cong are known as the uncertain enemy because, again, they're using guerrilla tactics. It was hard to know who's a friend, who's a foe of the Americans. And there's always that possibility of sudden danger because the Vietnamese peasants, they seem super peaceful during the day, but at night, maybe they aided or they became the Viet Cong. They knew the geography, like they knew the jungles. They have weapons, like I mentioned. They're going to make booby traps and mines in the villages right under the Americans' noses. Some of the materials they'll use would be like scavenged tin cans, discarded wire, duds from American bombs. I've seen a stat that in 1 year, dud American bombs could leave more than 20,000 tons of explosive scattered materials around the Vietnamese countryside. So after an air raid, Viet Cong volunteers would just retrieve the duds and then they'd create their own weapons. They, as I mentioned, they had tunnels, like they had total home field advantage. These tunnels they were digging when they were trying to get their independence from the French. And so there's going to be over 120 miles worth of tunnels that are 20 feet deep. Now, these tunnels, here you can see, here's an entrance to a tunnel. They were small because many of the Vietnamese, they are smaller framed than I might be. And so a lot of the rooms were only about 3.5 feet tall. But they knew the tunnels, they knew where the turns were, so they could get through those tunnels rather quickly. The tunnels were their hiding spots during combat, but it also served as communication and supply routes. They had hospitals in there. They would store their food in there, their weapons. They most of the time they'd spend their day in the tunnels working and resting, and then in the evening they would come out to scavenge for supplies, tend to their crops, or engage in battle. So looking a little closer, you could see that they had air vents. Well, you would think, hey, it'd be pretty easy for the Americans to find these air vents. And the Americans got smart. They eventually are going to use dogs to try to sniff out where these entrances to the tunnels are or these vents. But what the Viet Cong would do is they would put chili peppers out. So they would destroy the dog's scents with chili peppers. You could also see, obviously, they dug deep enough into the water table so they had fresh water so they could stay in these tunnels for days. Then you can see these little spikes. These are booby traps because Americans, we had these Americans called tunnel rats. So Americans that when they'd find a tunnel, they'd be the ones to go in after the Viet Cong. Well, if he's chasing a Viet Cong, the Viet Cong are going to know that there's a booby trap right here that they need to veer, to the right, where the American that's chasing him isn't going to know that. And so the American would fall in and then get hurt. Now, they had these punji traps all over, these spikes made out of bamboo hidden in pits. The point of the punji trap wasn't necessarily to kill the American soldier, but what it would do is if an American soldier's walking in a jungle, they fall in a punji trap. Now it's going to take a couple other American soldiers to help out their friend, their soldier. But on the punji trap was something that would contaminate an American. They would put their feces on the top of the punji trap. So then that way the American would also get an infection and then isn't going to be able to fight anymore. So these tunnels were brilliant for the Viet Cong. Here's a couple other images. This is an entrance. You can see how small it is. Tourists can actually go into some of the tunnels nowadays, but they've widened them because they were so small. So here's an American, a tunnel rat, in one of these tiny little tunnels. Here are some Viet Cong, some girls that are setting booby traps, mines for the Americans. And then here's a rolling trap, which will be in the video clip that I have on YouTube for you to see how that works. You can probably imagine stepping in to one of those and then what your leg might look like after. Youch.